Yo, good morning. I guess I should turn a light on here, but I guess do okay like it is. I'm gonna talk about a topic that's bothered me, and actually is of personal importance to me. Why is fertility rate declining? Well, here's why it matters to me. I've got 5 children, and my youngest daughter has a son. So it looks like I'm going to have one grandchild. And my grandchild, when he grows up, um, he will not have any brothers or sisters or cousins. And even on his father's side, his main father, his biological father committed suicide, but his father that's taking care of him now, uh, not likely to have any other siblings or cousins. So he pretty much grew up in a world by himself without any family. I just think that's sad as hell. I think it's really nice to have family, and I'm very sad that he will not have family. He will probably spend a great deal of his life, and hopefully will have a wife, but will spend a great deal of his life without family. And the way things are going, he'll get a wife that will not want children. So I'm I'm guessing he's going to have a much lonelier life than I had. Having and we don't make close relationships with neighbors and stuff. There's exceptions, but it's getting hard to have relationships. So I'm looking here, and most of what I'm going to be doing is reading from Perplexity. Uh, and I've also listened to a bunch of videos, and I've used Grok, and the answer that I'm looking for just isn't there. Why is fertility rate declining? You're going to hear there are so many reasons, there is no reason. Or there's no reason that, you listen to it and go, yeah, that makes sense, because it just, uh, I'm sure it makes sense, and it's just I'm not smart enough to understand it. But if you can make some comments, I'd really like to try to understand this subject. Why is fertility rate declining? Global fertility rates have experienced an unprecedented decline since 1950, falling from 4.8 children per woman to approximately 2.2. And we're going to see that over a lot of the Western world, half of the world, it's well below 2.1, the replacement rate. So the first thing people do is think about economic factors. Financial constraints represent the primary barrier to family formation globally, with 39% of respondents in a recent UN survey across 14 countries citing economic barriers as preventing them from achieving their desired family size. The 2008 financial crisis and its lasting effects on housing costs, inflation, and wage stagnation have fundamentally altered reproductive decision making as people increasingly delay or forego Parenthood due to concerns about affording children's basic needs. That actually makes some sense. But you'll see that there's a lot of cases when it turns out that doesn't actually apply. Rising costs of childcare, healthcare, and education have created particularly acute pressure on prospective parents, with treatments like in vitro fertilization remaining unaffordable for many Americans since insurance companies aren't required to cover those procedures that can cost tens of thousands of dollars. Student debt, expensive housing markets, and job insecurity compound these challenges, creating what researchers describe as an environment where worry is not worry is not a good moment to have kids, fundamentally reshaping family planning across developed nations. That sentence is kind of messed up, but you got the idea. So that makes some sense. People can't afford kids; they don't have kids. As we read on, you'll see that is about the last thing here that's going to make sense. Educational impact on fertility. Educational advancement, particularly among women, serves as one of the most significant drivers of fertility decline worldwide. So if women get educated, they're less likely to have kids. Birth rates decrease consistently as educational attainment increases, with the U.S. data from 2019 showing total fertility rates ranging from 2.8 births for women with a 12th grade education or less, and 1.2, 1.3 births for those with a bachelor's degree. However, the pattern shows some complexity at the higher educational levels, where women with advanced degrees sometimes have slightly higher birth rates than those with only a bachelor's degree. 61 versus 55 births per thousand. So, I don't know, 7 or 8% higher birth rates. The mechanism behind the educational effect operates through multiple pathways. Higher education leads to increased workforce participation, delayed marriage and childbearing, and greater access to contraceptive and family planning resources. Women pursuing advanced degrees in professional careers often postpone having their first child, with the average age reaching 27 and a half years, contributing to completed family size to smaller completed family sizes over a lifetime. This educational empowerment creates a demographic paradox where societies with the highest levels of female education and typically the most prosperity experience the steepest fertility declines. So we live in a world that if you become educated as a woman, you're much less likely to have children, which implies that if you don't have education, you're more likely to have children. So our population growth that we do have comes from those that are not educated, and I would guess don't quite have as much ability to financially care for a child. Okay, let's look at income and racial disparities. Recent data reveals concerning fertility rate.
In 2023, the median household income for Asian households was $112,800, followed by non.
That was my AI volunteering from my phone to add into this conversation. Pardon that. Recent data reveals concerning fertility trends among younger Americans with teenage fertility rates plummeting by 41% compared to pre pandemic averages, nearly 4 times the decline of overall fertility rates. This dramatic drop among teens reflects greater contraceptive awareness, increased abstinence rates, and economic pressures that began during the Great Recession. Similarly, Hispanic fertility rates have experienced particularly steep declines since 2008, falling from historically elevated levels to align more closely with other ethnic groups, representing a significant demographic shift that demographers are still working to fully understand. The age distribution of childbearing has fundamentally shifted, with birth rates declining sharply for women ages 15 to 34, while increasing for women in their late 30s and 40s. This pattern of delayed childbearing could theoretically represent only temporary rate reductions if women eventually catch up on birth rates later in life, but research suggests it more often results in permanent smaller family sizes due to biological and social constraints on later life fertility. The combination of these age specific trends creates a complex demographic landscape where overall fertility continues declining, even as some older age group show increases. So, the poor more likely to have kids than middle class. Young people who are using contraceptives. So I didn't get much out of that paragraph, but let's charge on. U.S. demographic patterns. Women in their late 30s and early 40s increasingly drive what limited fertility growth rate exists in America, with birth rates remaining unchanged for the 36 to 39 age group and actually rising for women ages 40 to 44. This shift toward later childbearing reflects broader demographic transitions, as the average age for first birth has climbed to 27 and a half years, 2 full years later than in 2003. Despite these late life increases, the overall trajectory remains downward, with the Congressional Budget Office projecting fertility rates for women under 30 to continue falling from 0.79 births per woman in 2025 to just zero point 0.6 by 2065. State level data from 2023 reveals the geographic scope of decline, with all 50 states experiencing fertility rate drops and 41 states plus Washington, D.C. recording the lowest rates in over 3 decades. Utah experienced the steepest decline at 20%, followed by New Mexico, New Jersey, blah, blah, blah. The percentage births covered by Medicaid has also declined across maternal age groups, suggesting shifts in healthcare access or economic circumstances affecting reproductive choices. Okay, so I generally get the idea that people can't afford kids, women get educated, have careers, put childbearing off. One report I listened to said that women's intentions have not changed, but they put it off, and then one day they wake up and it's too late. That seems to be account for a lot of the, the children. So, I kind of get the idea people can't afford, and I understand, our prosperity is less than it was, when I was growing up, but it's probably still better than my parents, their prosperity level. I know quite a bit about the life of my dad and my mom, and I definitely was more prosperous and had more growing up. And that generation had a lot of kids, so I it's hard for me to buy off that it's primarily financial. Uh, yeah, we have a lot of financial problems, but we may not think of ourselves as being rich, but almost nobody starves to death in America. Now, people are hungry, and there are kids that don't get food. I got that. But as a general rule, that doesn't explain 80% or more of the people. About 20% of kids are in poverty and need, some kind of help with food. But I don't buy that it's just a food thing. And so I did a little thing about Norway. Norway they've got a lot of oil, and they set up a fund. They put all the oil money in it and invested it. And they've got, hundreds of billions, and probably one day you'll have trillions of dollars in a fund to take care of a small population. I think 5 million or something. Anyway, small compared to us. And so those people, short of getting attacked by Russia or some calamity like that, are pretty well fixed financially. You can look into the details of that, but I think you'll find that you would love to be in their condition. So you'd think, well, they're having kids. Well, it turns out, no, not so much. Both the United States and Norway experienced significant fertility declines in recent years, though with different trajectories and underlying causes. The U.S. currently maintains a fertility rate of 1.66, while Norway's has plummeted to 1.41 as of 2022, the lowest rate in the country since records began, and well below the OECD average. This represents a dramatic reversal for Norway, which maintained fertility rates well above OECD average throughout the 1990s and 2000s, reaching 1.98 in 2009 before experiencing an almost 30% decline over the following decade. So Norway, when people have a lot of money, I think the average income level there is like 100,000 per person. But their fertility rate's even lower than the US. And they don't have Trump either. So figure that out. The timing and nature of these decline reveal contrasting patterns between the two nations. Norway's fertility collapse occurred despite maintaining robust economic conditions, comprehensive family policies, including 15 weeks of earmarked paternal leave, and universal affordable child care, suggesting that traditional policy interventions may be insufficient to address modern fertility challenges. In contrast, American fertility decline has been more closely linked to economic pressures, housing costs, healthcare accessibility. Notably, Norway's immigration population also experienced declining fertility, dropping from 2.6 births in 2000 to below 2 in 2017, indicating that demographic compositional changes alone cannot explain national fertility patterns. Both countries now face similar demographic pressures from aging population, though Norway's substantial sovereign wealth fund provides a financial cushion that the United States lacks. Okay, it basically says people in Norway have money and the means to have children, but their birth rate, their fertility rate is declining more than America. I've got a lot more stuff here, but I can't make sense out of it. I think if I'm going to give my Robert Odel's best guess, is that we don't feel connected to each other. We can't talk to each other anymore. And that lack of connectivity and the aloneness of that leads to people not having kids. That's just a Robert Odell theory. I wouldn't put much weight on it. But I've got piles and piles of data. Doesn't make sense to me. I think children are important. I think they're the best thing that's ever happened to me in life. Only thing even close to that is dogs. Cats, a distant third. If I got a horse, maybe I'd think that too. Which I always wanted. I just never have been able to afford. So now I'm going to wrap this up and just saying that it bothers me that people are not having children. It bothers me that the world that I'm going to leave, get old and die, is going to have less and less children. Now, that could reverse itself, but in places like South Korea, Italy, a lot of countries, it's not reversing itself. The cultures are just disappearing. The children and the culture, it's all going away. I take that as being really sad. Love, romance, all of it depends on people being here. So, I think we need to try to figure out how can we help people to be happier and have a more rewarding life. And I don't think that has much to do with money. Norway is an example. There's a lot of examples where it doesn't have anything to do with money. We need to find meaning, happiness, love, care for each other. And when we do that, I think we'll want to have children to share that with. I think that lack of connectivity and love between humans right now, I think that's why fertility rates are low. That's kind of my explanation for it all. I guess the world doesn't owe me an explanation, but I am sure curious about it. Sure would like to understand, and why would I like to understand? So maybe I could help other people understand, and maybe, help the world know how good it is to have kids and what they're missing. I feel sad for the world that doesn't have children. Wow. That's just like, to me, it's like the saddest fact in the world that we're not going to have children going forward. Or very few of them, and most people are not going to be around children. And it shows no sign of decreasing. South Korea's population every 25 to 30 years Well, half. So in 50 years, there'll be 25% of them left. 75 years, there'll be 15% or so. 100 years, they'll be pretty close to zero. South Koreans. I'm assuming they have a beautiful culture, just like most nations do. That's going to be gone. Anyway, this is the ancient Texan worrying about something that nobody else, or I can't say nobody else. I've just not run into anybody else that seems to be bothered by this lack of children in the world. Have a good one. Namaste.